Tonight we journey back to a time of fragrant rice paddies, slow-moving ox carts, and absolutely no concept of personal space. You're about to experience the full reality of being born into ancient China, not the romanticized dynasties with silk robes and tea ceremonies, but the ground-level experience, the one where your house smells like damp straw and boiled turnips, and your destiny is sealed before you even know what a toothbrush is. I'm the candlelight historian, and this is history as it was lived, unforgiving, unfiltered, and brutally real. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really enjoy these videos. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now, relax, take a deep breath, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You arrive into the world crying, loud, wet, and entirely unaware of how badly your timing is. It's a year of bad harvests and angry spirits, or so the local fortune teller insists, which means your birth is already a cosmic inconvenience. The hut you're born in leans slightly to the left, like it gave up resisting gravity sometime last winter. Its walls are made of packed mud and straw, lovingly smeared by hand and then cracked by weather and time. When it rains, the roof drips in at least 4 places. When it's dry, the air turns to dust and settles in your lungs like a second, unwanted blanket. Your mother squats over a rice mat, panting, gripping a stick for support, while your grandmother hovers nearby, muttering prayers to the kitchen god. There's no privacy, no sterile instruments, just hot breath, trembling hands, and the heavy smell of boiled herbs. And smoke, there's always smoke. From the cooking fire, the incense, or someone burning something outside that probably shouldn't be burned. You're swaddled in scratchy fabric, passed around like a warm turnip, and greeted with a level of scrutiny that would make a modern job interview feel like a hug. Everyone wants to know if you're a boy, if you're strong, if your ears are lucky, if your cry is defiant or just weak. No pressure. The village elder peers at your face and mutters something about horseface, dog, destiny. No one laughs. Your life might now be defined by that phrase. You're placed in a bamboo cradle that's seen better centuries. It creaks like it resents your weight. A chicken pecks nearby. Somewhere behind you, a pig snores. Welcome home. There's no insulation. The seasons pass through your walls like gossip. In summer, the heat cooks the inside of your hut into a kind of sweaty soup. In winter, the cold slides in and settles on your bones. The only constant is the smell, a rich bouquet of dirt, smoke, animal droppings, and fermented vegetables. It's a scent that seeps into your skin, your hair, and eventually your dreams. The days begin early here. Not with a rooster, those are too lazy. It's your grandfather coughing his lungs out beside the fire. You cry, not out of hunger, just protest. You're new to this place and already fed up. As an infant, you're carried on your mother's back while she works the fields or pounds grain. You bounce with every step, a tiny, unimpressed passenger in a world that never stops moving. You're rarely alone. Cousins, neighbors, and livestock all occupy the same space. If one baby cries, 3 more join in. It's less a lullaby, more a level siren that never switches off. There's no such thing as quiet. Every hour is filled with clatter, tools hitting stone, pots banging, arguments about nothing that somehow sound personal. You fall asleep to it all, dreaming of a silence you'll never meet. As a baby, you're assigned no personal objects, no toys, no name that isn't also a weather pattern or a vegetable. You might be called Little Turnip or Rain Second, and it's not cute. It's efficient. You're bathed occasionally in a wooden tub that smells like mildew and missed opportunities. The water is rarely warm. Soap, as a concept, hasn't quite arrived yet. You're more wiped than washed, and always wrapped back up before you can shiver too much. Everything in the house has multiple jobs. The rice bowl is also a measuring cup. The straw mat is also your bed, your table, and your play area. The family heirloom is a slightly less dented ladle. Multitasking isn't a skill here, it's a necessity. As weeks pass, you begin to crawl, which is a terrible idea. The floor is a carnival of hazards. Dropped bones, discarded fish heads, sharp pebbles, and the occasional beetle who's just trying to get by. You taste everything, and no one stops you fast enough. You develop an iron stomach, mostly out of necessity. Every few days, a neighbor shows up to check if you've got the prosperous cry or the sickly yelp. Apparently, the fate of the family might depend on it. No one's quite clear how. But traditions are hard to argue with, especially when the people quoting them are holding hot tea and look like they haven't smiled since the last eclipse. If you're a boy, there's cautious optimism. Maybe you'll work the fields. Maybe you'll take the family name into glory, or at least avoid total disgrace. If you're a girl, the mood is less enthusiastic. You're already viewed as a future financial liability, and your greatest value might involve marrying someone who doesn't live too far away. Birthdays aren't really celebrated. Instead, every festival doubles as a reminder you've survived another season, which, here, is no small feat. Your cries slowly turn to gurgles. You start recognizing faces, sounds, the general rhythm of a life that rarely pauses. It's not easy, but it's yours. You've made it through your first year, smoke-choked lungs, damp swaddles, public inspections, and all. No one says happy birthday, but someone gives you a slightly less burnt dumpling. That's affection, and that's enough. By now, you've figured out that comfort is a myth. There are no soft edges in this world, just rice husks, wooden bowls, and adults who believe that pinching cheeks builds character. You're a toddler in ancient China now, which means the world is either too hot, too cold, or too confusing. The hut hasn't grown, but you have. You now share your space with one pig, 2 cousins, 3 chickens, and what feels like 6 dozen fleas. You wake up each day to a symphony of animal noises, snoring, and your uncle muttering something about ghosts in his dreams. The air is thick with steam from the cooking pot, and the unmistakable scent of boiled cabbage that someone started preparing last night, or last week. Honestly, it's hard to tell. You eat kanji every day, always kanji. Sometimes it's thick, sometimes it's thin. Sometimes it has something floating in it that might be fish, or might be a mistake. It's warm and bland, like a hug from someone who doesn't like you very much. You drink from a clay cup with a chip in the rim, and no one worries about germs. Because no one knows what germs are. Illness is just bad wind or disharmony. Your nose drips, your legs are always dusty, and you're probably mildly dehydrated at all times. Your clothes are hand-me-downs from a cousin you've never met. They smell like old straw and disappointment. Your feet are mostly bare, and the earth outside is either sharp, squishy, or suspiciously warm in places it shouldn't be. When it rains, the ground becomes soup. When it doesn't, it cracks like old skin. Either way, it ends up under your fingernails, on your cheeks, and sometimes in your kanji. The adults are always busy, carrying things, boiling things, scolding each other. They talk about taxes and ancestors, spirits and weather. You understand none of it, but you know when someone's angry, the tone rises, the finger pointing starts, and someone always blames the neighbor's goat. Again, you're allowed to roam, but not far, just enough to get into trouble. You chase chickens that hate you. You touch frogs that immediately regret your curiosity. You fall down a lot. Scraped knees are considered a rite of passage. Tears are optional. Dirt is permanent. Hygiene is a flexible concept. You'll wipe down occasionally with a damp cloth, usually after a particularly sticky encounter with sweet potato. Baths are rare events, almost ceremonial. There's a special wooden bucket used for bathing, stored upside down in the corner, and only filled when you've become what your grandmother refers to as visibly crusty. The water is cold. The soap is wishful thinking. The towel is a damp rag that smells like someone else's feet. There's no privacy, ever. You eat with others, sleep beside others, pee behind the same shed where the dog also holds court. If you wander off, someone grabs your arm and points you back toward the hut with the kind of grip that says, "I love you, and also don't push your luck." Everyone comments on your body. If you're chubby, they say you'll be rich. If you're skinny, they say your spirit is clever. If you hiccup, they blame it on ghosts. If you sneeze, they blame it on your mother not wrapping you tight enough. If you fall asleep with your mouth open, someone gently pinches your nose closed to test if you're still alive. The games you play are all survival training disguised as fun. You learn how to squat for long periods without falling over, how to climb things that probably shouldn't be climbed, and how to flick pebbles with terrifying accuracy. One kid invents a game involving spinning a beetle by its legs, and suddenly it becomes the villager's favorite pastime until someone's dad puts a stop to it. The beetle lives, barely. You don't know what a toy is, but you love sticks. Sticks are swords, walking canes, tools, and occasionally snacks when no one is watching. Your imagination is a survival mechanism. You turn clouds into dragons and puddles into lakes of doom. You don't know how not to be curious, even though every new discovery is accompanied by a scolding or a stubbed toe. Your friends are mostly your cousins. Whether you like them or not, one of them eats dirt. One of them screams when they see their own reflection in a puddle. One is clearly smarter than the rest and has already figured out how to nap under tables without being found. You admire that one deeply. Hunger is a constant companion. Meals are predictable and sparse. Rice, greens, maybe a slice of dried fish if you're lucky. Festivals bring better food, but also more people, which means you still get the smallest dumpling and the chopsticks with a splinter. You learn early to eat fast, guard your bowl, and never turn your back on your cousin with the twitchy eye. If you get sick, you're wrapped in warm cloth, given a bitter drink made of herbs, and left to sweat it out. A neighbor might come by with a pouch of crushed something, mutter a few words, and shake a stick over your belly. You don't know if it helps, but the ritual is oddly comforting. You've already been sick 3 times and recovered twice, which puts you slightly ahead of the curve. Sometimes the adults gather to talk about the imperial tax collector. That always leads to louder voices and tighter jaws. You don't understand much, but you learn to recognize tension. It smells like silence, mixed with burnt rice. The days are long, the nights are longer. Candles are expensive, so bedtime happens with the sun. You lie on your straw mat, listening to the creaks of the house and the distant howls of dogs or spirits, or possibly just your uncle snoring. Your blanket smells like ash and old radish. You hold on to your stick, your one possession, and hope it's still yours in the morning. Sleep comes eventually, sometimes peaceful, sometimes itchy. You dream of flying, of rain that doesn't ruin everything, and of food that never ends. When you wake, it starts all over again. And no one ever asks how you slept. You're 6 now, technically. No one's keeping track with candles on a cake, or a calendar on the wall. The best guess is based on your height, your chores, and the number of teeth you've lost without crying. You're officially old enough to contribute to society, or at least to your family's endless list of tasks. Your first job is simple. Carry water from the river twice a day. The river, of course, is downhill from your village and requires a walk that feels suspiciously longer on the way back, mostly because you're hauling 2 sloshing buckets tied to a bamboo pole across your shoulders. It's heavy. Your spine is already protesting like it knows what's coming for it over the next few decades. You don't complain, though. Not because you're brave, but because complaining just adds one more task. Usually sweeping the floor, which never stops accumulating dust, crumbs, or small piles of mystery fluff. After water comes firewood, then feeding the animals, then helping your aunt pound grain with a wooden mallet that's almost taller than you. Your hands are constantly scratched, and your fingernails now have permanent dirt tattoos. Your reward, a mild nod from your grandfather and a slightly larger scoop of rice, on a good day. The animals are, in a word, rude. The chickens peck your toes. The pigs step on your feet. The cow looks at you like it's planning something. And every single one of them makes noises at night like they're auditioning for a horror story. You begin to understand why people in the village whisper about ghosts. Anything that wails like that after midnight must be cursed, or hungry, or both. You try to play sometimes. You do. But the space between chores is measured in gulps of air and stolen minutes behind the house. Games now involve stones, sticks, and occasionally unlucky insects. You and your cousin invent a game where you throw clumps of mud at a tree and pretend you're soldiers defending the emperor. You have no idea what the emperor looks like. You assume he's clean and tall, probably doesn't smell like wet straw and goat. You're told stories while you work, fables about clever foxes, honorable warriors, and loyal sons who carry their parents on their backs for miles. You wonder quietly if your parents expect that from you, based on how often your mother hands you things and says, "Hold this like a proper son." The answer is probably yes. Sometimes you help in the rice fields. Your feet sink into the mud with a sound that feels like the earth is trying to eat you. Frogs scatter, leeches wait. You bend, scoop, plant, repeat. The sun is high, your back hurts, and the only break comes when someone yells snake and everyone jumps at once. The snake is never found, but the fear is deliciously distracting. Lunch, if you're lucky, is a bit of millet porridge or salted greens. You sit on an overturned bucket or crouch in the shade. No one says much. The heat has boiled the energy out of everyone. Even the flies seem sluggish. Occasionally, a stranger passes through the village. A peddler, a monk, a man with scrolls. You stare like you're seeing a dragon. New people carry stories, smells, and sandals that don't look like they were chewed on by dogs. You ask questions, but your aunt pulls your ear and hisses, "Don't stare." You do it anyway. It's the most exciting thing that's happened since the pig got into the cabbage. Some days, the air is thick with smoke from nearby burning fields. Other days, it's thick with gossip. Someone's cousin ran away. Someone else got caught stealing fish. Someone else married a girl from outside. The scandal is delicious, even if you only understand half of it. You file it away for future retellings. Drama is currency here. You learn to stay quiet around adults unless spoken to. You learn to eat fast and speak slow. You learn which cousin snores, which uncle cheats at games, and which parts of the roof leak when it rains. You know how to patch a mat, when to duck during arguments, and which dogs bite without warning. Your clothing hasn't changed much. Still itchy, still too short. You've developed a habit of scratching your calves with your other foot, like a stork with trust issues. You smell like smoke, dirt, and childhood. No one minds. One day, your grandmother takes you to the edge of the village to visit a shrine. She mutters prayers and lights a stick of incense. You copy her movements, even though you're not sure what any of them mean. She places a peach on the stone platform and tells you to bow. You do, because you always do. Then she tells you that spirits watch over everything, even you. That night, you dream about those spirits. You wonder if they're bored too. There are bugs, always, mosquitoes in the summer, lice in the winter, fleas forever. You've become an involuntary feast, and no one seems particularly alarmed about it. Scratching is just part of life now, like breathing, blinking, and not making eye contact with your angry uncle during meals. You hear talk of school, but it's like hearing about a palace made of gold. School is for the boys with connections, money, or unusually persuasive grandmothers. You can't read. You don't know anyone who can. The village elder once squinted at a scroll and claimed it said good fortune. It might have said chicken soup, but no one corrected him. Still, you dream, sometimes of big cities, sometimes of being rich, mostly of rice. Endless, fluffy, white rice, served in a bowl you don't have to share with anyone. And as you drift off to sleep on your woven mat, your back sore, your feet sore, your everything sore, you think, just for a moment, that tomorrow might be different. It won't be, but the thought is nice. School, as it turns out, is a luxury you don't get to experience. Not unless your family's rice harvest suddenly triples, or your father wins an argument with the tax collector, which, judging by his voice whenever the topic comes up, is not going to happen. Still, the idea floats around the village like a myth. Books, ink, learning. It all sounds very exotic. Like wearing shoes just because you want to, not because of snow. Instead of school, you get chores and lectures. Lots of lectures. Mostly from your grandfather, who insists that memorizing Confucian sayings is more important than playing with frogs. You're not convinced. The frogs are more entertaining and less judgmental. The closest thing you have to education is watching the neighbor's oldest son practice writing characters in the dirt. He's lucky, his uncle was a clerk, and someone decided that made the whole family literary adjacent. You squat beside him sometimes, pretending to copy the strokes with your finger. Mostly you draw fish, and then you eat one, because your uncle brought back dried fish yesterday, and that's all you've thought about since. If you're a boy from a wealthier family, you might have been sent to a private tutor by now, an old scholar with a thin beard and even thinner patience. You'd sit cross-legged for hours on end reciting the analects, learning to read classical Chinese, and writing essays about virtue. But you're not from a wealthier family. Your tutor is the rice field. Your textbook is the sky. Your diploma is not getting smacked with a broom for daydreaming while carrying water. And if you're a girl, school's not even a conversation. Instead, you're learning embroidery, how to cook without burning the millet, and how to speak softly while still being heard. An advanced skill no one ever teaches boys. You're trained in obedience like it's a craft. There's no ceremony, just repetition. Sit straight, serve tea, lower your eyes, say thank you, don't argue, breathe smaller. There is, however, one teacher you do get: experience. It's not gentle, it's not certified, but it works. You learn fast. You learn which dogs bite, which adults are easily flattered, which chores can be delayed by pretending to have a limp. You learn that hot soup can disguise the taste of almost anything, and that the fastest way to lose your turnip is to blink. You also start learning stories, from elders, from neighbors, from that one merchant who comes through every third month and smells like cinnamon and regret. He tells you about cities where buildings have 2 floors, where bridges stretch across rivers like giant stone snakes, and where people wear silk even when it's not a holiday. The adults always say those stories are exaggerated, but they listen just as hard as you do. Your curiosity grows. You ask more questions, which often earns you more chores. There's a direct correlation between curiosity and laundry duties, you've discovered. Why do stars move? Laundry. Where does wind come from? More laundry. Why do we worship ancestors if they're gone? Triple laundry and a long talk from your grandmother about respect. Still, you ask, because your world is small and your mind is not. You sometimes sneak away for a moment of stillness, by the edge of the pond, or under the old fig tree that doesn't quite fruit but still gives shade. You watch insects, you toss pebbles, you imagine a life where you wear clean robes and speak in metaphors like the poets people quote but never meet. There's a kid in the next village over who supposedly knows a few characters. His father was a tax clerk and still owns a brush. You meet him once during a festival, and he writes your name in the dirt with a stick. It's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. You stare at it like it's magic. Then your cousin steps on it by accident, and the spell breaks. You don't get angry. You just memorize the shape and draw it again in secret, over and over, until it lives in your hands. Your education is built from fragments. A proverb here, a story there. You memorize things by accident. You learn to listen between the words adults say. You learn that sometimes silence says more. You learn which rituals are for the gods and which are just traditions no one questions anymore. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin to understand your place. You are part of a family, which is part of a village, which is part of a district, which is ruled by people you'll never meet, who work for an emperor you'll never see. The world is structured, layered, and enormous. But your world, this stretch of farmland, this cluster of homes, this endless sky, is where you belong. For now. The days pass like footsteps, rhythmic, unchanging, a little dusty. Each one looks like the one before, but inside you something stirs, a quiet knowing, a tiny ember, that even without scrolls and ink, you're still learning. And one day, if you're clever, you'll pass that knowledge on. Just maybe not through a book. It turns out your fate isn't really yours. It was assigned before you could even form a full sentence. By birth order, by gender, by the alignment of the stars, and by how much rice your family can spare to bribe the village astrologer. Your destiny was sketched out using tools far beyond your control, and none of them had erasers. Your grandfather swears by the lunar calendar and a system of fate reading that involves your hour of birth, the phase of the moon, and whether the family cat meowed during labor. According to him, your chart says you're hard-working but unlucky, strong-willed but clumsy, and destined for moderate disappointment with occasional flashes of okayness. A pretty solid result, all things considered. Your mother adds her own predictions. You'll marry someone practical. You'll inherit the family tools. You'll take care of her when she's old. You nod, because you're supposed to, but deep down, you're still hoping for a life involving dragons, or at least a decent roof. If you're a girl, your future was sealed with your first swaddle. You'll learn how to sew, cook, and accept decisions made for you. You'll be taught to be modest, obedient, and invisible at the right times. Eventually, you'll be married off, more of a transaction than a choice, and packed away like a favorite set of bowls, handed to someone else's household. With luck, your new family won't hate you. With even more luck, your husband won't be twice your age, with a fondness for fermented tofu and yelling at clouds. If you're a boy, expectations are heavier but still rigid. You must provide, uphold honor, follow the rituals, farm well, marry respectably, produce sons, and don't embarrass the ancestors. You're not expected to dream, just deliver. The village treats fate like a checklist. You're born, you work, you marry, you raise kids, you age, you die, repeat. No one questions it, because questioning it feels like asking why water is wet. That's just how it is. Don't rock the boat, especially when the boat belongs to your uncle and he's already mad that you lost his best hoe last week. Sometimes, someone tries to break out. A cousin leaves to join the army, hoping for glory and adventure. He returns 2 years later with a limp and an allergy to loud noises. Another young man runs off to the city to study medicine. No one hears from him again. But occasionally a rumor floats back that he now wears shoes indoors and eats with porcelain. The idea of choice is whispered about, but rarely lived. You feel it in small ways, like when you pick which patch of grass to nap on, or whether to go left or right around the pigs. That counts, sort of. Your dreams are subtle now, less about becoming a hero, more about sleeping past sunrise or getting your own rice bowl that no one touches. You've learned to be quiet about what you want, not because it's forbidden, just because it's impractical. Marriage, for example, is less a romantic journey and more a calendar event. The adults begin discussing your options, which sounds like they're trying to buy a goat. Someone suggests a match from the next village, a girl who's said to be quiet, healthy, and good at folding dumplings. You've never met her. You probably won't until the wedding. That's not unusual. Love is something that happens after marriage, if it happens at all. More often, it's replaced by tolerance and a shared dislike of in-laws. The matchmaker visits once, looks you over like a piece of furniture, and nods. A good omen. Your grandmother does a small celebratory cough. Your father grunts. Your mother cries, but it's hard to tell if it's pride or dread. Maybe both. You watch the adults trade gifts, chickens, cloth, a slightly dented bronze pot. Negotiations are awkward and long, with lots of fake smiling. Eventually, everyone agrees that the two of you are an acceptable match. You are now engaged, and nothing about your daily life changes except the number of people giving you unsolicited advice. If you're lucky, you like each other. If you're less lucky, you tolerate each other. If you're truly cursed, your spouse sings in the morning and thinks soup should always be room temperature. But either way, the outcome is the same. Shared responsibilities, shared space, shared blame. You wonder, sometimes, what would happen if you refused? If you said no, if you chose something else. But that kind of thinking has no place here. It's like planting seeds in stone. Beautiful idea, no fruit. So instead, you go along. You learn how to smile on command, how to say thank you when you mean please stop talking, how to agree without agreeing. It's a skill, one that gets you through festivals, family dinners, and conversations with the matchmaker, who always smells like pickled radish and smugness. And deep down, under the layers of mud, rice chaff, and expectations, you keep something small and silent just for yourself. A thought, a hope, a spark. Maybe, just maybe, fate can be nudged, or at least elbowed politely. You're barely 14 when the wedding arrives, which feels both far too early and somehow overdue. You don't get much warning. One day, your mother tells you to fetch more wood. The next, she tells you to scrub your face and stand still while an ant brushes your hair so aggressively it feels like a personality adjustment. The entire village seems to know before you do. The match has been arranged, confirmed, and blessed by an astrologer who claims the stars are mostly aligned, which is apparently the best anyone gets. If you're a girl, your job is to look demure and grateful while your relatives pack your things, a woven basket of clothes, a set of clay bowls, and maybe a red cloth for luck. If you're a boy, your job is to stand very still while older men slap your back, offer vague advice about knowing when not to speak, and smile with a kind of grim solidarity. None of them look particularly happy. There's no rehearsal, no speeches, just a quick ceremony with incense, bowing, and a table of offerings that includes half-rotted pears and a duck who does not want to be here. You bow to your new spouse, to your parents, to the ancestors, to the corner of the room where someone once saw a spirit. You bow so much your knees crack. And just like that, you're married. It's not awkward, it's much worse than that. It's quiet, suffocatingly polite. You're now expected to live together, sleep together, make small talk about millet yields, and eventually, produce children. No one explains how. They just assume you'll figure it out, like lighting a fire or dealing with pigs. Your new home is not much different from the old one. A little darker, a little colder, and filled with people who don't know how you like your rice and don't care. You are now part of their family, which means you start at the bottom of the hierarchy, below the dog, but slightly above the laundry. Everything you do is watched. How you chop vegetables, how you carry water, how you breathe. Your in-laws nod approvingly or shake their heads slowly, like judging an undercooked dumpling. Your spouse is not cruel, but not warm either, just present. You speak in small fragments. Past that, move here, sleep now, and try to read each other's silences. Sometimes you get it right, mostly you don't. If you're lucky, they snore softly. If not, you learn to sleep through a nighttime symphony of throat whistles and unconscious muttering. If you're both unlucky, you talk about feelings once, and then never again. The idea of romance is almost laughable. You've seen love stories in puppet plays, but tragic, noble, full of flowers and sacrifices. But here, your greatest romantic gesture is making sure the other person gets the bigger yam, and maybe sitting closer during winter without being told to. There are rules. Always rules. A wife must serve tea to elders. A husband must provide rice for meals. Both of you must pretend everything is fine, even when someone has clearly burnt the soup and refuses to admit it. You visit your own family less and less. Not because you don't miss them, but because walking back alone after dark is a guaranteed encounter with something. Either an angry goose, a bored thief, or a spirit with bad timing. You write letters in your head, never on paper. You wouldn't know where to send them anyway. Occasionally, you argue, quietly, briefly. The walls are too thin for long discussions. Instead, tension builds in shared silences and passive slurping. You master the art of the side eye, of the sigh with purpose, of the chopstick clatter that says, "I'm not mad, but I'm not mad." Eventually, routines form. You figure out who wakes first, who handles firewood, who remembers to cover the food so the rats don't party overnight. You settle into something that resembles stability, or at least resignation. And then the questions begin. From neighbors, from aunts, from your mother during her annual surprise visit. When will there be children? Why aren't there children? Do you need help having children? You want to disappear into the nearest jar of pickles. Pressure builds like steam under a clay lid. Everyone expects children, not for joy, for continuation, for status, for proof that you're useful. Fertility is currency, and yours is being loudly audited. When a child finally comes, whether soon or after many failed seasons, it is not really yours. It belongs to the family, to the ancestors, to the future. You carry it, feed it, rock it to sleep, and still feel like you're holding something fragile that the entire village has claimed. You get compliments and advice, so much advice. Don't let the baby sleep facing north. Don't feed it turnips. Don't sneeze near it. And whatever you do, don't let it see its own reflection before it's 100 days old. You don't know why. No one does. But they all agree, so you obey. Marriage becomes less about who you're with, and more about what you build. A roof that mostly doesn't leak. A rhythm of daily tasks. A shared understanding of when to talk and when to let the tea boil in silence. Some days, it's tolerable. Others, it's barely that. But on rare nights, when the wind is soft and the soup is just right, you sit side by side and laugh about nothing. The fire crackles. The world is still. And for a moment, it feels like enough. Being married doesn't spare you from the emperor's reach. If anything, it tightens the grip. You are now a fully responsible adult, which means you are also a fully responsible taxpayer. And in ancient China, that means grain, labor, obedience, and zero complaints. The emperor himself, a figure so distant, he may as well live on the moon. You've never seen him, you never will. But his shadow stretches across every rice stalk, every tax notice, and every word the village headman delivers with that same apologetic grimace. Your contribution to the empire isn't optional. Taxes are collected in whatever form your family has. Rice, cloth, or time. If your harvest was weak, too bad. If your pig died, doesn't matter. If your cousin eloped with your best spade and 3 sacks of barley, still your problem. The tax collector arrives with an entourage and a face like wet stone. He doesn't smile. He doesn't need to. The scales he brings are rusted and suspiciously skewed, and you know better than to argue about fairness. The last villager who complained ended up publicly beaten and then taxed again for wasting everyone's time. Sometimes your payment is labor. You're assigned to dig a ditch that the village has needed for years, or sometimes build a road no one will use except other tax collectors. You wake before dawn, carry rocks bigger than your hopes, and work under the eyes of a supervisor whose voice has two settings, angry and angrier. There's no payment, just the honor of serving the empire. Which is funny, because honor doesn't fill your stomach or patch your roof. When you limp home that evening, blisters blooming on your palms, you wonder quietly if the emperor knows your name. Then you laugh. Of course not. But you pay him anyway. Edicts arrive by messenger. Long scrolls read aloud by a man who coughs halfway through and smells like pickled garlic. The messages are always the same. The emperor is wise. The ancestors are pleased. And your village must contribute more to help the empire prosper. You nod, because nodding is safer than screaming. If you're clever or desperate, you try to hide a little extra rice. Bury it in a pot under the floorboards. Tuck it into sacks of hay. But everyone knows, and so does the tax collector. Sometimes they find it. Sometimes they just find enough to make a point. Either way, you pay. In food, time, or humiliation. Then there are the festivals. Oh, the irony. Celebrations decreed by the emperor to show harmony under heaven. You're expected to hang banners, make dumplings, and act grateful, even if your legs still hurt from building the new granary. You wear your least worn robe and pretend you haven't aged 5 years since the last festival. The village square fills with food you can't afford, songs you barely remember, and old men who loudly recall the good emperor from 3 reigns ago. You smile because smiling is polite, and politeness is survival. Even your conversations are governed. You don't speak ill of officials, even when they deserve it. You don't question why the grain quota went up this year. You don't mention how the magistrate's son has a new horse while your cousin's baby sleeps on a mat stuffed with rags. You say nothing. You wait. You endure. There are rules about everything. How to bow. How to refer to the emperor, never by name. How to behave during inspections. How to submit petitions on paper you don't have, using words you're not allowed to write. The structure is rigid, unshakable. You are not an individual. You are a brick in a wall, and bricks don't speak. Still, sometimes you wonder, what if the emperor saw your house? Would he care? Would he send help? Or just raise the tax again for the inconvenience? When a census is taken, you're counted like livestock. Age, occupation, family members, how many teeth you still have. Everything is written down in elegant brush strokes by a scribe who doesn't look up once. You consider lying about your age. Then you realize it wouldn't change anything. Except maybe how many more years they expect you to dig canals. Your only protection is obedience. Your only rebellion is sarcasm whispered in the dark. A joke shared during late-night cooking, or a sarcastic bow when no one's watching. It's not much, but it's yours. And occasionally, someone fights back. A village refuses the new tax. A local leader speaks out. The army arrives. The lesson is taught and remembered. So you go along. You keep your head down. You nod at the right moments. You say the emperor's name like a prayer. And you hold tight to one quiet, stubborn truth. You are not free, but you are still here. You wake one morning with a tight chest and a runny nose. And that's the beginning of your descent into the mystical world of ancient Chinese medicine. A field where treatments are equal parts poetic, herbal, and slightly alarming. You mention your symptoms to your spouse. They nod, then casually inform your mother-in-law, who reacts like you've announced a demonic possession. A fever means an imbalance. A cough means bad air. A headache, possibly a ghost, or maybe a diet problem. It's hard to say. Within hours, someone is boiling something in the kitchen that smells like burned licorice and regret. A concoction of herbs, roots, twigs, bark, and maybe a lizard tail. No one tells you exactly what's in it. You're just expected to drink it, hot, thick, and bitter enough to curl your eyebrows. The first sip makes your tongue revolt. The second sip makes your soul question its existence. The third sip is followed by a warning. Don't vomit. It won't work if you vomit. You ask if there's anything else. Maybe something simpler, like lying down. They scoff. No, you need to rebalance your ki, which apparently involves putting sticky coins on your forehead and lying under a blanket while someone hits a small gong next to your left foot. You're not sure how this helps, but you're also too tired to argue. Then comes the cupping. Clay jars are heated and placed along your back until your skin bubbles into round, red welts. It draws out the illness, they say, as you wince. It draws out something, you reply under your breath. Your aunt recommends acupuncture. She brings in a friend who claims to have studied under a monk. He looks like he once got into a fight with a goose and lost. Still, he rolls out a cloth, nods solemnly, and begins sticking thin needles into your arms, legs, and one very questionable spot near your elbow. You lie there, looking like a porcupine in existential crisis. Meanwhile, your grandfather insists on a different treatment. Garlic paste behind the ears, goose fat on your chest, and 2 hours of chanting while holding a warm stone. You try to refuse, but he's already rubbing the paste in, humming something that sounds suspiciously like a lullaby and a threat at the same time. The medicine cabinet. If you can call a bamboo box with strings on it a cabinet, contains a dried seahorse, powdered deer antler, a clump of fungus, and something labeled snake wine. You are assured this all works. You remain unconvinced. When things get worse, you're brought to the village healer, not a doctor. A man who smells like old tea and seems to have survived 2 plagues just by glaring at them. He presses your wrist, stares into your eyes, taps your head with a knuckle, and declares, "Your liver is annoyed." He prescribes boiled chrysanthemum petals, frequent foot rubs, and less worry. You nod obediently, wondering how exactly one stops worrying in a life like this. Rest isn't an option. You're still expected to feed the animals, sweep the house, and smile at guests. Being sick is not considered an excuse, it's an inconvenience. If you can sit, you can stir soup. If you can stand, you can carry water. If you're too sick to move, someone will simply prop you up and insist the fresh air will fix everything. Some neighbors bring advice, most of it contradictory. Eat hot food only. Don't eat. Eat cold food only. Rub an egg on your forehead. Rub your forehead on an egg. You try them all. None work. You remain sick. Your spouse begins making extra soup, which is the local love language. Your in-laws begin whispering when they think you can't hear. You start to wonder if the illness is real or if you've simply lived too long in a world where exhaustion is the default setting. But slowly, you begin to recover. Not because of the goose fat or the dried starfish you chewed on that one night. You just do. The body has its own schedule, and it doesn't always consult the herbalists. By the end of the week, you can walk without wobbling. Your chest loosens, your nose dries. The healer declares your ki is stable again, and your grandmother burns a strip of paper to thank the ancestors for not letting you die. You nod solemnly, then immediately go home and lie down, because almost dying is exhausting. and just as things settle, someone else in the house starts coughing. So it begins again. You thought winter was bad, and it was. But summer in ancient China is its own kind of suffering, wet, loud, and relentless. The heat doesn't arrive politely. It slams down like a wok lid on your entire life. Everything becomes sticky. Everything smells stronger. Everyone complains, but with the quiet tone of people who know complaining doesn't help. Your clothes cling to you like wet rice paper. Your hair, once manageable, now defies gravity and common sense. Your back is a permanent river of sweat, and your armpits feel like a festival of damp misery. You try to sleep, but the nights are thick with heat and mosquitoes. You slap more than you rest. The animals suffer too. Pigs wallow deeper, chickens pant like dogs, and the dog just disappears for 3 days, presumably to cry in the forest. Everyone starts cooking earlier, trying to beat the heat, but it doesn't matter. By mid-morning, the house is a sauna, the air thick with the smell of fermented vegetables and rising tempers. You try fanning yourself with a piece of palm bark, but it's like trying to wave the heat away with a suggestion. Your mother-in-law offers a helpful comment. Just don't think about it. You consider applying the same advice to your marriage. Bathing becomes an act of desperate improvisation. You drag a bucket to the river, fill it with lukewarm water that smells faintly of frog, and pour it over yourself in the shade, while swatting away bugs that seem personally offended by your presence. It doesn't cool you down. It just makes the sweat start over with a vengeance. Food changes too. The porridge gets thinner. The greens get saltier. Everyone talks about avoiding hot foods, spicy things, oily things, emotions. Stay calm, says your uncle as he argues with a melon. You eat more fruits, mostly because they require no cooking. Melons, peaches, and anything that doesn't fight back when bitten. Sometimes you chew on ice if you can get it from a merchant, shaved into a sad little pile and priced like gold. Sleep becomes a group activity in misery. The house is too hot, so everyone drags their mats outside. You lie there, side by side with family members who snore, twitch, and roll too close. The stars above are beautiful, but the ground is lumpy and the bugs are militant. You drift in and out of sleep to the tune of crickets, night dogs, and someone farting 2 mats away. Then the rains come. At first, it's a relief. The clouds gather, the wind stirs, and for a moment, the air feels lighter. The first drops hit the dirt like promises. You smile. Everyone does. The village exhales together. A cool breeze passes through like a whispered apology. Then it doesn't stop. The rain doesn't just fall, it assaults. It punches down in sheets, turning paths to soup and rice fields into shallow lakes. Your yard becomes a pond, your storage room a puddle, and your kitchen a water feature no one asked for. The roof leaks in 5 new places, each one forming a rhythmic drip that tests your sanity with every passing second. You spend hours chasing buckets, bowls, pots, anything that can catch water. The floor squelches when you walk. Your bedding smells like mildew and despair. You attempt to dry things in corners that are slightly less damp than others, knowing full well it's hopeless. The animals panic. The chickens scream and try to roost on the roof. The pigs sulk. The cow just stares at the horizon like it's waiting for the world to end. You relate. Floods are the real threat. If the rain continues, the river will rise. You remember stories from elders about past floods, crops drowned, homes swept away, entire villages reduced to driftwood. No one says it out loud, but you can feel the fear under every conversation, every glance at the rising water. You start to ration food, just in case. You stack firewood on tables. You try to act calm, even as your breath shortens with every thunderclap. Your cousin tries to lighten the mood by pretending to swim across the room. No one laughs. When the water finally begins to creep over the edge of the rice paddies, the village scrambles. Sandbags, makeshift walls, digging trenches with cracked hands and muddy feet. You help, because there's no choice. No one sits during flood prep. Everyone moves, everyone sweats. Even the old men mutter prayers as they work. The water rises higher, and then it stops. Just in time. The village survives, mostly. A few storage huts are lost. Some fields ruined. One unlucky family's house collapses under the soaked weight of its own roof. You help them rebuild. Quietly, without complaint. Because, next time, it could be yours. When the skies finally clear, it's not sunshine that returns. It's mosquitoes. Thousands of them. Millions. They come in clouds, in waves, in aggressive little squadrons that treat your skin like a free buffet. You become a walking itch. You slap, scratch, swat, and swear quietly into your sleeve. The mud doesn't dry for days. You slip often. You fall once and land directly in a puddle that smells like disappointment. No one helps. They're too busy, falling into their own. Still, life resumes. You mop, you restack firewood. You wring out your clothes and hang them in the same sun that once threatened to melt you. And when evening comes, you sit outside again, just like before the storm. Watching the steam rise off the wet ground, the dragonflies zip past, and the sun sink behind the hills. It's quiet, still. You survived the heat. You survived the flood. You survived your cousin singing. And tomorrow, it all begins again. You're not sure what's worse, being hungry or being hired by the state to dig holes for 8 days straight with a spade that feels like it was forged out of resentment. But here you are, conscripted into a labor project, which is the Empire's generous way of saying, thanks for being alive. Now go move a mountain. It starts with a message nailed to the meeting post in the village square. Red characters. Official seal. The moment someone reads the words aloud, public works duty, everyone groans in unison. You're not even surprised anymore. The Emperor needs canals, or roads, or maybe just more bricks stacked in pointless formations. It doesn't matter. You've been chosen, again. You pack a bundle, rice, salted turnips, a damp rag, and a pair of wooden sandals that will betray you the moment mud appears. Your spouse hands you the bundle without a word. You nod. This is a familiar routine. The journey to the worksite takes a full day. You and a group of unlucky villagers march in a quiet column under the summer sun. The road is uneven. The air buzzes with flies and the hum of feet dragging. You all carry tools slung over your backs like burdens that became physical. At some point, someone tries to sing a song to lift morale. It dies halfway through verse 1. You arrive at the site, a wide expanse of rock and dirt. A supervisor waits for you. He has a scroll in one hand and a stick in the other. He does not blink enough to be trustworthy. Your job? Simple. Move dirt from over there to over here. Why? For the Emperor. What will it do? It will exist. That is enough. You work barefoot, toes sliding in the dirt, hands blistered after the first hour. The sun is relentless. There's no shade except the one your shadow gives you, and it is deeply uncooperative. Sweat runs down your spine in a steady stream. You lose track of time and start measuring progress by how many times your shovel hits a buried rock and nearly breaks your wrist. Lunch is whatever you brought, eaten sitting on a warm stone with dirt under your nails and in your teeth. You chew in silence, eyes squinting at the horizon, as if salvation might be walking toward you in a cloud of steamed buns. It isn't. At night, you sleep in a shared tent that smells like despair and wet socks. You lie on a mat so thin it might actually be conceptual. You curl into yourself, arms aching, dreams interrupted by someone snoring like an angry ox and another someone talking to ghosts in his sleep. You'd be unnerved, but you're too tired to care. On the second day, your muscles revolt, your shoulders burn, your knees whine. Your spine makes a sound you didn't know spines could make. Still, you keep going, because stopping means punishment. Or worse, more work later to make up for lost time. The days blur. Dig, haul, stack, repeat. You begin having conversations with your shovel. You start naming the rocks you keep tripping over. You and a man from the next village bond over a shared hatred of the supervisor's whistle, which he blows for no reason other than to remind you that joy is a fragile thing. By day 5, you've lost track of the calendar, the phases of the moon, and why you ever thought life might one day be peaceful. You consider that this might be your life now, forever transferring one pile of meaningless material into another. But then, as abruptly as it began, it ends. The supervisor blows his whistle one final time and announces you're finished. The work is complete, he says, although none of you understand what's actually been built. A ditch, a path, a monument to confusion. No one cheers. You just gather your things, lighter than when you arrived, because someone stole your spare turnips, and begin the long walk home. Your feet blister with every step. Your hands are torn. Your soul feels like it's spent a week in a rice grinder. But when your village comes into view, nestled between the trees and crooked roofs, you feel something strange. Not joy, not pride, just survival. Your spouse doesn't greet you with flowers. They hand you a cloth for your face and say, "There's soup if you want it." You do. You sit on the threshold of your home, sipping lukewarm soup, and listen to the world resume its rhythm. Children arguing, pigs snorting, someone yelling about millet. And you smile, because at least you're not carrying bricks anymore. Until next time, because there's always a next time. You can do everything right, work hard, follow orders, smile through cracked teeth. But in ancient China, none of it matters. If the weather turns against you, and when it does, it turns fast, no warning, no apology. 1 year it doesn't rain, the sky stays clear for weeks. Then months, the rivers shrink. The soil dries and curls like old parchment. The rice plants bend low, whispering surrender before their stalks even ripen. You stand in the middle of your family's field, staring at the cracked earth beneath your bare feet. There's no point planting. Nothing will grow. The sun has stolen the season. It's not just hot, it's hostile. The air itself seems to hum with tension. Your throat stays dry, no matter how much water you drink. Your body aches from hauling buckets from a stream that's more mud than water. The clay pots you filled last month are now half empty. Evaporation. Your grandfather says, a thief with no name. There's no state relief, no visit from an official, just rumors that the emperor is concerned, which does very little for your dying crops and empty pantry. Your meals shrink. A bowl of rice becomes half, then just porridge, then just hot water with a leaf or two. You gnaw on roots and wild herbs that normally only goats consider. Your body adapts in the worst way. It stops asking for more. Hunger becomes a constant hum. Not painful, just ever-present, like a second pulse. Then, another year, it rains too much. It starts with a slow drizzle, then becomes a downpour, then a flood. The soil turns to soup again. The stalks rot before they can be harvested. You try to dig drainage ditches, but the water keeps coming. Relentless, indifferent. At night, the sound of the rain becomes unbearable. Not calming, not rhythmic, just endless. It drowns conversation. It drowns hope. You sleep with your legs curled tight, trying to keep warm while also worrying that you'll wake to find the floor gone. The pigs panic. The chickens perch in trees. You hang food from the rafters and hope the damp doesn't ruin it. Spoiler, it does. After the flood, everything smells like rot. Your home, your clothes, even your breath. You carry buckets of ruined grain out of the storehouse and dump it behind the latrine. The rats, somehow, look healthier than ever. This is farming in ancient China. An endless game of hoping nature is in a good mood, and quietly panicking when it isn't. You pray to ancestors. You burn incense. You mutter small apologies to the sky. None of it guarantees rain, or sunshine, or mercy. Your entire survival hinges on the tilt of a cloud. When the crop fails, everything else follows. There's less to eat, less to trade, less to give in taxes, which, by the way, still exist. The state doesn't stop asking just because your fields are underwater. You pay, or they take something else. People grow thinner, tempers shorten, even the children stop playing. The village, once noisy, becomes quiet, except for stomachs. They make their own kind of music now. You begin to rely on wild food, leaves, bark, insects. You hear about people in nearby villages boiling grass. You hope it doesn't come to that, but you also quietly make a mental note about which grasses might be less awful than others. Occasionally, someone disappears. A cousin leaves for the city, chasing rumors of food and work. A neighbor's daughter is married off to a merchant in exchange for 3 bags of rice. No one talks about it openly. You just see fewer faces at the well. And yet, life doesn't stop. Babies are born. Meals are cooked, even if they're just hot water and memories. You mend your tools. You patch the roof. You keep going, because that's what everyone does. There's a particular kind of strength in this. Not heroic, not glorious, just stubborn. The year after the flood, the weather is perfect. Gentle rains, warm days. You plant cautiously, afraid to hope. But the seedlings grow. The green shoots spread. And then, finally, the golden heads of rice emerge like tiny promises. That year, you eat until you're full. And it feels like a miracle. You don't believe in ghosts until the lights go out. The wind starts talking, and the dog refuses to go near the northeast corner of the hut. Superstition is not just background noise in your life. It is life. It flows through daily routines like water through rice paddies, unseen, constant, and taken very, very seriously. There are rules. So many rules. Don't sweep the floor at night. Don't whistle after dark. Don't point at the moon. Don't sleep with your feet facing the door. Don't say the word death on festival days. Don't hang laundry on the 5th day of the 5th month. Why? Because the spirits are always watching, that's why. And the last thing you want is an annoyed ancestor floating above your roof, muttering, disrespectful. Your home is filled with protective charms. Red slips of paper with characters scribbled in black ink. A bundle of garlic hanging near the door. And a small statue of the kitchen god whose job, apparently, is to watch you eat and tattle to the heavens if you've been slacking. And don't get started on shadows. A long shadow at noon. Bad luck. A crooked shadow at sunset. Worse, if a chicken refuses to enter a room, you simply don't go in. Chickens are spiritually sensitive creatures. Everyone agrees. Except chickens, who mostly just seem confused. Dreams matter, too. You tell your spouse you dreamed about a black ox, and now your cousin refuses to lend you his ladder, a white flower in a dream. That means someone you know might die. Maybe, unless it was on fire. Then it means something entirely different. Probably marriage. You've memorized the layout of your home, not for comfort, but for spirit flow. Doors must align with fortune. Beds must not face directly out. The rice jar cannot be placed beside the broom. Feng Shui isn't some interior design theory. It's survival strategy against invisible forces. The elders warn you constantly. That twitch in your eye, bad omen. That cold breeze when no one's around, definitely a spirit. That feeling that someone's watching you, absolutely a spirit. Or your mother-in-law. Both have equal power. During festival days, the village becomes a choreography of rituals. You light incense and bow 3 times to the family altar. You offer fruit. You pretend not to notice that someone already took a bite out of the peach. You burn paper money, thin sheets with gold squares printed on them, so your ancestors can buy things in the afterlife. You hope they appreciate it, or at least spend wisely. But ghosts aren't always ancestors. Sometimes there's something else. You've heard stories. Everyone has. The woman who drowned in the river and still appears on foggy mornings. The child who went missing during the Dragon Boat Festival and whose laughter still echoes through the bamboo. The soldier whose head never made it back to his body and now wanders, looking for it, and also, inexplicably, for dumplings. You don't go near the graveyard at dusk. You don't walk past abandoned wells. And you definitely don't accept fruit from a stranger who doesn't blink. Every sound at night has potential. Is it the wind? Or is it something standing just outside, watching? Your mind plays tricks on you, but also, it might not be your mind. That's the trick. You carry charms in your clothes, a knot tied by your grandmother, a sliver of jade, a folded piece of paper with words written in shaky calligraphy. They rattle against your ribs when you move. Protection, insurance, a spiritual firewall. And when something goes wrong, a pot breaks, a child falls ill, a chicken lays a strangely shaped egg, no one blames chance. It's always bad luck, a missed ritual, a forgotten offering, or worse, someone said something they shouldn't have. Everyone suspects it was your cousin, who keeps joking about ghosts like he's never met a real one. You even start to believe in omens during ordinary things. A sneeze at the start of a journey, cancel it. A spider on the front gate, good luck. Unless it's too big, then it's probably a demon. You learn to interpret the world not just through sight and sound, but through patterns, feelings, and the specific way a candle flickers when no window is open. And in this world, belief is power. Fear becomes discipline. Ritual becomes comfort. And ghosts, real or not, become part of your extended family. You grow used to them. Their silence, their presence, the feeling that you are never quite alone, even when you are. And on certain nights, when the wind dies down and the sky is quiet, you bow toward the shadows. Just in case you don't remember when it started, when your knees began cracking with every step, or when your back folded into a soft question mark, but it happens slowly, like rice cooking on low heat. One day you're hauling baskets without complaint. The next, you grunt every time you sit down and mutter something about the good old plow handles. Congratulations, you've made it to old age, which here means anything past 40. If you're still alive, you're either lucky, careful, or too stubborn to quit. Your teeth are no longer reliable. Your eyesight now has moods. And your knees, those traitors, ache in every season. Cold, hot, rainy, windy, celebratory. You've developed a talent for predicting weather just by standing still and listening to your joints complain. You shuffle more than you walk. You grumble more than you speak. And somehow that gives you power. Suddenly, everyone listens. Not because you're wise, necessarily, but because you're older. That's the real authority. You've survived long enough to have opinions, and now you get to deliver them with absolute confidence, even when they're wildly inaccurate. You sit near the fire most mornings, slurping kanji and judging the youth. They're too soft, too slow, too fond of questions. We never asked why, you say proudly, while adjusting a cloth wrap around your back that smells faintly of medicinal wine and modest regret. You tell stories. Some are true, most are embellished, but no one interrupts, not because the stories are good, but because interrupting an elder is a punishable offense, usually with more stories. Your grandchildren avoid you when they can, mostly because your advice always begins with "back in my day" and ends with someone being eaten by wolves. Still, they bring you your bowl, your seat cushion, and occasionally, gossip. Your favorite currency. Your spouse, if still alive, has become less a partner and more a co-survivor. You sit together in companionable silence. You finish each other's complaints. Sometimes you argue just to pass the time, but it's quiet, predictable, and always ends with tea. Your duties have changed. No more fields, no more heavy lifting. Now you guard the fire, watch the children, shout vague warnings about spirits near the outhouse. You're the village scarecrow in human form, except warmer and more likely to lecture. Occasionally, someone consults you about serious matters. Planting, marriages, dreams. You pause dramatically before answering, usually to remember what you were about to say. Then you mutter something about balance and ancestors, and they nod like it's profound. You've mastered the art of the thoughtful squint. Food becomes softer, blander, chewed longer. Your favorite dish now is anything without bones. You savor soups like they're banquets. You drink hot water like it's medicine, mostly because it is. You develop hobbies, not on purpose, just naturally rearranging the straw mats, rewrapping your leg bandages with exaggerated care, sitting outside and squinting meaningfully at the horizon. No one knows what you're looking at, not even you. Festivals take on new meaning. You no longer run around lighting lanterns or helping make dumplings. You sit in the warmest spot, nodding approvingly, occasionally offering advice that no one asked for but everyone pretends to appreciate. You watch people now, closely, the young couple arguing over firewood, the middle-aged farmer stacking too little rice and too much pride, the new baby who stares at you with round, unblinking eyes. You see patterns, cycles, repeats of stories you lived decades ago. You shake your head, you smile. You start preparing, not in a morbid way, just practically. You tell your children where the family heirloom is, an old ladle with a crack. You remind them what to burn for you when you're gone. You make peace with the fact that your name will one day be said during New Year rituals, right before the incense burns too low. But you're not in a hurry. There's still firewood to judge, grandchildren to scowl at, congee to complain about. You watch the seasons move past you like familiar guests, unrushed, unchanged. Spring with its sticky air, summer with its drama, autumn with its dying light, winter with its sharp silence. You wear more layers, speak fewer words, sleep lighter, dream deeper. You have no empire to build, no debt to pay, just stories to share, and maybe a few more to collect before the night closes in. And in that quiet, sagging hut, as smoke curls toward the rafters, you lean back. You've lasted. That's the win. It ends not with drama, but with softness. You lie on a mat that's been patched more times than you can count, wrapped in a blanket that smells like warm rice and old smoke. The fire flickers nearby, low and gentle. A bowl of soup sits beside you, still steaming slightly. You're not hungry, but the gesture matters. Your breath comes slower now, not labored, just deliberate. Like your body is savoring each one, like it knows there aren't many left and it wants to get them right. You're surrounded by voices, quiet ones, familiar ones. Your children speak in hushed tones. Your grandchildren peek through doorways, unsure if they should come closer. Someone is making tea. Someone else is pretending not to cry. You remember everything and nothing. Your first bowl of sweet porridge, your wedding day, awkward and rushed. The year the flood came, the year it didn't. The rice fields, the pigs, the sound of rain on the roof that wasn't fixed yet. You remember laughing. You remember not having enough. You remember having just enough. No one says goodbye. That's not how it's done. Instead, someone lights incense. Someone places a folded cloth under your hands. Someone whispers a prayer that only the ancestors can hear. You close your eyes, and the world exhales with you. After, there is wailing, loud, theatrical, proper. It echoes through the village like thunder in a valley. Your name is spoken over and over, sometimes in reverence, sometimes just to make sure it's still echoing in the walls. The morning rituals begin. A white cloth is hung at the door. Neighbors arrive with gifts, rice, eggs, dried fish. They bow 3 times. They speak about how strong you were, how wise, how you once carried a whole bundle of wood without stopping. The children roll their eyes. They've heard that story too many times. You're placed in a simple wooden coffin. No gold, no silk, just wood that smells of sap and earth. Your body is wrapped in layers of cloth, and a coin is placed in your mouth. Payment for the journey ahead, or perhaps a bribe to the afterlife's gatekeeper. The funeral procession moves slowly, measured steps, heads bowed. The village elder reads a eulogy that's more about tradition than truth. It mentions your great patience and humble strength. It omits your sarcasm and your famous dislike of the neighbor's goat. People cry because it's expected, because it's polite, because it's real. Grief in ancient China is loud, choreographed, and honest. After the burial, the family returns home. Your favorite bowl is placed on the altar. A piece of your clothing is folded and stored. On festival days, your name will be called in whispers. Offerings will be left for you: fruit, tea, incense, things you can no longer taste, but somehow still receive. But soon, the days blur. The mat is reused. The bowl eventually passed down. A child is born. Another marriage. Another season. The rice grows again. And you fade, slowly, like mist at dawn. Not forgotten, just woven into everything. The wind in the trees. The smoke in the kitchen. The creak in the floorboards where you always sat. And so the story ends. No glory, no legend, just a quiet life lived in full. Hard, strange, beautiful in its own way. A life where survival was the victory, where small joys were enough, where you mattered, even if the emperor never knew your name. And now the fire fades. The village falls quiet. The chickens have roosted. The last pot is cleaned. Somewhere the wind slides between bamboo stalks, gentle and cool. The stars are out, softly watching. The smoke from the hearth curls upward, slow and steady. It carries with it the scent of earth, of meals shared, of lives once lived. Your breathing slows, your muscles finally still. Your body sinks into warmth, into silence, into something deeper. You've walked a full life tonight, felt the straw beneath your back, the sun on your skin, the cold in your bones. You've worked, you've rested, you've loved quietly and complained loudly. You've survived what needed surviving. You've endured what couldn't be changed. And now you drift. The world softens. The weight lifts. A field of golden rice sways gently in your mind, stretching far and wide beneath a clear, forgiving sky. A breeze touches your cheek, not hot, not cold, just perfect. There is no more hunger, no more aching, no more need to bow, to haul, to explain, to endure. Only stillness, only peace, only the slow turning of the seasons, and the quiet knowledge that, in your small corner of a vast and ancient world, you truly lived. Sleep well and good night.